This is Gemara in Sotah Daf Mem Bees, and we're holding on Mem Aleph Amid Bees. We're 5 lines into the wide lines by the 2 dots, or 4 lines in, The Gemara begins by quoting a simin af ovid gehenim biyadai, your page just shrunk, pardon, one more time. Simin biyadai nida gaila. This is a mnemonic as the Gemara often presents before beginning a new sugya. Here it's going to be with regard to Chanifa, the topic that we left off with in the previous year. So begins the Gemara of Amir Rav Elazar. We're 5 lines into the wide lines on Mem Aleph Amid Bees. Amir Rav Elazar kol adam sheish bei Chanufa, any person that has within him a flattery. He flatters people. Even the fetus in their mother's womb, curse him. One who tells the wicked person, you are a tzaddik, by telling someone who's wicked, you're a tzaddik, you flatter him, what happens? The people come along, they curse you, and the le'umim are going to as well yizamu as form of curse. Ve'in kaiv, what does this word mean? Ela klala shenemar leikaba kel. Ve'in le'um ela ubrin, refers to the fetus. Shenemar ula'im ela'im yamat. So the terrible flattery is that even the ubers, the unborn fetuses, are coming along and cursing this person. Rav Elazar continues. Rav Elazar 5 lines from the bottom. Kol adam sheish bechanufa noifel begehenim. Shenemar, as the pasuk teaches us, hayayim rim l'ratoif. Whoa, hi. So those who say to the rise, Toiv u'l'toiv, Ravi goymer, maksiv acharav, what does the pasuk continue? L'chein, therefore, ke'echol kash l'shoin eish, as a tongue of fire consumes kash, consumes straw, v'chashash lahava yirapeh, and stumble will a flame pulverize. And the pasuk continues, it's going to rot, and the flowers are going to blow away. So what do we see? That the fire and flame, that's referring to the place in Gehenna, unfortunately, for those who are over on Chanufa. Anyone who flatters his friend, Soif Noifel Biyadai, will fall into his hands. Let's use the example that the Gemara just gave. You call the Rasha a tzaddik, you yourself will fall under the jurisdiction of that Rasha who you called a tzaddik. If not, you'll fall to his children. The grandson. Yirmiyahu teaches Chananya, Amen Kain Ya'aseh Hashem. So Amen, yes, it's true. So too will Hashem do. Yakum Hashem Etzvarach, Hashem will withhold your words. At the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash will be returned, and the Galus will happen. Uksev, and continues the Psukim by he who, and it was. We turn over to Mem Beis Amid Aleph, today's Daf. When we continue, the pasuk says, Vayihu b'shar binyamin. And he was in, Yirmiyahu was in the Shar Binyamin. V'sham ba'al bekudas, u'shmo Yiriyah. And there was an official there. What was his name? Yiriyah ben Shalmaya ben Chananya. Yirmiyah ben Shalmaya, the son of Chananya. Of course, the critical ingredient over here being traced back to Chananya. Vayitva, he says Yirmiyahu, and he grabbed Yirmiyahu, Navi Lemer Ko Elakastim atanoifel, you are leaving behind the kastim. Yirmiyahu, and Yirmiyahu responds, Sheker, no, inenu noifel elakastim. That's not true. I am not deserting the Kastians. Uksiv, and the pasuk continues, Vayitvos Yirmiyahu, and Yirmiyahu grabbed Vayitvos Yirmiyahu, Vayavu al Asarim, and they threw it on the side of Yiriyah. So Yiriyah, who's the person who was giving him the musar, grabbed a hold and brought him to the officers. And the pasuk continues how they beat up Yirmiyahu, they threw him into the jail, etc. So what do we see? That Yirmiyahu Hanavi, he was giving Chanifa to Chananya. He eventually falls into the hands of Yirah, the grandson of Chananya. Amar Rav Elazar continues. Rav Elazar, 6 lines down. Membeis Amar Aleph Kol Ida Sheish Bei Chanufa. Any congregation that has Chanufa, Mu'usa Kinida, is as repulsive, as disgusting as a Nida is having relations with a woman while she is seeing blood, while she is menstruating. And continues the Gemara to prove Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ki adas Chanif Galmud. For the congregation flatters is Galmud, Shekin B'Karayayam, overseas, what do they call Kar Lanida? A Galmuda. So we're equating the two, the Chanifa to the Galmuda. My Galmuda says, the Gemara, Gemula da mi baila, that she is separated from her husband. Rav Lazar, continue Rav Lazar. Will be going to Galos. Ksivacha says over here, Ki adas chanef galmoi. The pasuk we just quoted, Ksivasim, and it tells elsewhere. V'amarta bil vav chanin senior mi yolad li. Who gave birth to me as Ela? Vanisha Kula, Vigalmuda, Goyla, Visura. You're going to say, oh, who gave birth to me? I'm so disgusting. And Goyla Visura, that's the word we're adding on that you're going to go to Golos. Amar of Yemir Barabba, Araba, Kitois, Ein, Mekablis, B'nei Shechina. Case wasn't bad enough, all the terrible things they were talking about Hanifa, talking about flattery, comes along Rav Yirmiyah Barabba and he says, there are 4 groups of people that are not going to be Mekabel B'nei Hashchina. Katalitzim, those who scoff, v'kat chanifim, those who flatter, v'kat shikarim, those that lie, v'kat misafrei lashon hara. And the truth is, just by putting you together in this boat with these 3 other dreadful people, it really paints us the picture how horrible Chanifa is. And says Zimar Kalitzin Dechsev Mashach Yado Yisloitzim Kat Chanifa Dechsev Kilo Lefanav Chanav Yavai Kat Shkarim Dechsev David Shkarim Lo Yichavin Leneged Eini Kat Misafrei lashon hara Dechsev Kilo El Chafetz Rasha Atal Ligur Chara Tzadik Ata Hashem Lo Yugar Migur Chara. What does this last pasuk mean? Kilo El Chafetz Rasha Atal Ligur Chara. Hashem does not want Rasha. Hashem does not want wickedness. But Tzadik Ata Hashem, Hashem is righteous. Lo Yugar B'Migur Chara. He doesn't dwell in such a place. Hadron Aloch Ne'emarin. We should do an incredible chazara of the 7th perek of Gittin. Keep on making the same mistake, excuse me. The 7th perek of Sotah B'siyata Dishmaya. Without further ado, we continue on the bottom half of Membeis Amid Aleph as we start the 8th perek, the perek called Meshuach Milchama. As the words of the Mishnah begin, Meshuach Milchama. We continue the rules of that which has to be said in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, in continuation of the previous sugya. So the Meshuach Milchama b'Shashem Medaber Elam, when he speaks to the people of Lashon HaKodesh Medaber, he would speak in Lashon HaKodesh. He's galvanizing Klal Yisrael for Milchama. Talks of Lashon HaKodesh and Amar v'haya kikarvechem el mechama, when you come close to war, v'nigash hakayin, and the kayin approaches, zeh kayin meshuach melchama. This is the kayin that we're referring to, v'daber elam, and he speaks to the people of Lashon HaKodesh. Continues the Mishnah, excuse me. What does the kayin say? V'amar aleim Shema Yisrael. Kain says here, Klal Yisrael, Alevechem, against your enemies, V'lo yalachechem. Excuse me, we're having some minor issues today. One more time. Alevechem, V'lo yalachechem, on your enemies, on your brothers, Lo Yehuda, Lo Shimon, Lo Shimon, Al Binyamin, Shem Tiflu Biyadam. Because why? Shem Tiflu Biyadam, if you fall into their hands, what's going to happen? Yirachmu Aleichem, they're going to be merciful on you. Kama, how merciful? Kamoy Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Yekumu Anashim, Asher Nakvu B'Shemois, as the pasuk says, and the men of Klal Yisrael who were mentioned in Nakvu B'Shemois by name, V'chazku B'Shivya, and they took to captive V'chol Ma'arumeyem Hilbishu Min HaShalal, and all who did not have clothing, they were clothed from all the spoils of the war. Vayalbishom, vayanilom, they got dressed, they put in their shoes, vayachilom, and they ate. Vayishkoim, vayasuchum, and they anointed themselves. Vayishkoim, vayasuchum, vayinahloim b'chamorehem, and they were mounted onto donkeys. The chol, koyishel, all those who stumble, vayaviyehu, and they are brought Yericho ira tamarim, and they're brought to Yerichai, the area of the Tamarim, next to their brothers. We're on the first wide line. Continues the Gemara, Vayeshuvu Shomrain. Pasuk concludes, the people of Klal Yisrael returned to Shomrain. Aleveim ataholchem, and they said to them, but you go to battle, you go to war against your enemies, Shem taflu biyadam, ein merachmim aleim. That if they fall into your hands, do not show rachmanos to them. Continues the Gemara, quoting that which the Kayin Meshuach Melchama would read. Says the Gemara, El Yerech. Excuse me, minor highlighting issues here now. El Yerech levavchem al tiru val techvazu. Says the pasuk, Al Yerech levavchem, do not be afraid in your heart, which we translate in Al tiru levavchem nesahala asusim sechsuche charavois. What should you not be afraid of your heart from the horses and the neighbors and all their swords? Al tiru, don't be afraid. Mimnei hagefen trisin v'shifas kalgosin. Do not be afraid of the shields and the many enemy soldiers. Al techvazu mikol karnois. And do not panic from the sounds of the horns. Al te'ertzu mimnei kol tzvachais. Do not be broken by the sounds of enemies screaming. Continues the Kohen Gadol, ki Hashem alekeichem. Hashem walked with you in bayim kinisuche shel basar v'dam. But you come with the strength of a regular person. V'atem. But you come v'atem bayim v'schun shel makayim. But you come with the ultimate strength, talking to Hashem. Plishtim bayim v'schun shel galis. Plishtim came with the strength of galis. Malis seifel so nafal b'charev. Eventually, he was killed by the sword that he fell upon. Bnei Amoin naflu imay. Bnei Aaron ba'u b'nei schonei shal v'shayvach. Ma'ay seifay l'seif nafal b'charev. What happened at the end? At the end, he fell on his sword. Ve'atem i'am v'naflu imam. Ve'atem i'am atem kein. Kei Hashem le'chechem ha'olichem elchem. Ilchem lilachem lachem, to which the battles with you. That refers to Zemach and Aaron. So again, this end of the Mishnah, we're going to have to see a little bit deeper into the Gemara. So says the Gemara, my Kamar. And we begin the Gemara asks, my Kamar, what was the Meshuach Melchama telling Klal Yisrael? The Pasuk says, Amar Ta'aleim, and he speaks to them. My Kamar, what does he say? Hachi Kamar, Shenemar v'diber. Meaning, the Gemara's conscious, what's the raya? Says the Gemara, Shenemar v'diber, regarding the Kain, it says, and he should speak. And elsewhere it says Moshe Yedaber, and Moshe Rabbeinu is talking. And Hashem answers with a voice. We see the word Diber, word Mira Mahala, and Lashon HaKodesh Avkam, Lashon HaKodesh. Tana Rabbanon, says the Gemara, V'nigash HaKoyin v'Diber Elohim, the Koyin approaches and he speaks to the people. Yachal Kol Koyin Sheyir, say you would think any Koyin's allowed to do this. Talmud Laimar, says the Pasuk. V'dibru ha-shaitrin, and the shaitrin, and the officer should speak, that the kayin over here is equated to the shaitrin, ma shaiter b'memuna, av kayin b'memuna. Just like the officers are appointed, so too it has to be a kayin that's uniquely appointed for this job, not any kayin out there. Ask the Gemara, fine. So maybe a kayin gadol. Maybe it has to be the kayin gadol. If you want a specific kayin, maybe it should be the kayin gadol. Says the Gemara, Dumya de shaiter, ma shaiter sheish mimuna al gabav. Just like when it comes to the officer, there's an officer and there's an officer appointed on top of him. Av kayin sheish mimuna al gabav. So too refer to a kayin that there's a kayin on top of him, meaning it's not the man on top, it's not the kayin gadol, but rather it's the kayin in which there's a kayin on top of him. Says the Gemara, kayin gadol nami oika melech al gabav. What do you mean? The Kohen Gadol as well, he wasn't on top, he wasn't the very top. I apologize, I noticed right now that anyone who's been trying to look at the screen was not able to, as the Gemara was cut off. But ask the Gemara, the Kohen Gadol as well, one more time. The Kohen Gadol as well, he was not on top. Why? There was the Melech that was on top of him. Says the Gemara, ba'avodas lekamar. We don't mean in general. We mean in the avodah that needs to be someone on top of him, which of course is the koyin hamemuna. Now there's going to be the koyin gadol on top of him. V'ima sgan. Maybe it's the sgan koyin gadol, the assistant. Sgan lav memunu. The sgan is not considered appointed. The Tanya goes to the Brayso of Chanina. Sgan ha-koyanim lama. Amar Rav Chanina Skan HaKahanim. So Rav Chanina, who he himself was the Skan HaKahanim, he said, Lama Skan Memuna. For what function is the Skan appointed? That what? Only Shimar Sul Kohen Gadol Nichlas V'Shamish Tachtav. But he's not appointed to be the one to speak and to rouse up Klal Yisrael before the Milchama. Continues the Gemara, what did the Kohen say? 4 lines on the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Aleph. V'amar Aleim Shema Yisrael. Ma'ishla Shema Yisrael. Says the Gemara, what does he mean when over here he says Shema Yisrael Amar V'yechel Mishum Shemin Yochai Amar Lema HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Says the Kadosh Baruch Hu to Klal Yisrael Afilu Lo Kiyamtem Elo Kriyish Mashachris V'Arvis. If only you would have just fulfilled Kriyish in the morning and night Yatam Nimsarim B'Yadam, you would not be delivered into their hand. You want to know how to be successful in battle? All it is Gras Kriyishma, and of course, lots of Torah explaining what exactly this means. And the Kohen continues and he says, Al Yirach Levavchem. Do not let your heart become faint. Al Tiru, do not be afraid. Tanu Rabbanan says the Gemara, this Memuna would speak to them 2 times. Achas b'sefer v'achas b'milch. V'achas b'svar. One it's on the border of Eretz Yisrael before they go out. V'achas b'milchama. Once during the battle. Bisfar ma'u oimer on the border. As they would leave Eretz Yisrael, what would this Memuna, what would he say to them? Shimu, listen. Divri ma'archei ha'melchama v'chazu. He would say to them, hear words about the war, and let those who are exempt, those who are pater, let them return. Ma'u oimer. B'melchama ma'u oimer. What would he say? That's what he would say on the border, before they actually left. But b'melchama, during the actual battle, what would he say then? He would tell them, Al yirach levavchem. Do not be afraid. Do not let your heart become faint, literally. Al tiru, do not be afraid. Val tachbizu el vi'al ta'artzu. And do not panic and do not become broken. Keneged arba devarim. These 4 things that he's saying, again, Al yirach, Al tiru, Al tachbizu, Val ta'artzu. These 4 things that the Kohen Memuna is telling Klal Yisrael is what? 4 things that the Goyim do. Magifin, Mariin, Tzvachin, V'roimsin. They clash their shields together, they blow their horns, they scream, and the horses stamp their feet. So the Kohen is telling Klal Yisrael, don't allow the externalities, don't allow the screams, the shouts, the bangs, don't let them frighten you. And we continue, 5 lines down, Mem Beis Amud Beis. The Bishas came with the strength of Goliath. Goliath. What's this Goliath? He stood with brazenness, Gilui upon him, in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shenemar, as the Pasuk says, Baru lachem ish, v'yered elai. As the Pasuk says, choose a man and let him come down to me, ve'in ish. What does ish mean? Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar Hashem Milchama. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says Hashem, Hareini ma'apilu al yad ben ish. You, Goliath, you feel you're so big, I'm going to make you be brought down by the son of a man, a ben ish, a mere lad, a mere child. Shenemar, of course, we know who was the one that defeated Goliath was David HaMelech. He wasn't David HaMelech yet. David ben ish Afrasi. And David was the son of Afrasi Azeh. Amar Rav Yechon Shemer Meir. So excuse me, in the previous drasha, we see the pasuk refers to David as Ben Ish. That's what we're darshaning, that he wasn't older, he was young. In 3 places, the words of the wicked one of Goliath were tripped up. Barul Echad, what's number 1? As Goliath said, Brulachem Ish, v'yirad elai. Goliath says, choose a man and let him come to me. Goliath is saying, he on his own, these are words that were showing that within his own words, he's foreshadowing that which is going to happen, that Goliath is saying, come upon me, Eli. And we're darshaning that it was a form of saying that David HaMelech was going to be the one to win. Vedach, and number 2, the Pasuk says, if I'll succeed in battle and he's going to hit me, he's foretelling that David HaMelech is going to hit down the Goliath. Vedach, and number 3, Dikamar le David, Goliath tells David, Hakelev anoichi, ki ataboy elai b'maklois. Am I just a dog that you come upon me with a stick? Here too, the Goliath is saying, come upon me, showing that David HaMelech is going to be the one that's going to be victorious in this battle. David Nami Amarle. David HaMelech as well says to Goliath, you come to me with a sword, with a spear and with a javelin. So says the Gemara, 1 second, you're darshaning Ba'ilai. But David HaMelech said the same lashon of Ba'ilai. So how could the words mean that it means you're going to come upon me, you're going to win, if David HaMelech said the exact same words? Says the Gemara, Hadar Amar Lei. You know why? Because afterwards David HaMelech says, V'nochi Ba'ilech. And I'm going to come to you, B'shem Shem Savakas Al-Kei Yisrael Ma'archas Yisrael Asher Charafta, that you have ridiculed. So David HaMelech then says that he comes with the name of Hashem. So we see what he said prior is meaningless. Continues the Gemara, once on the topic of Goliath, Vayigash HaPlishtim, and the Plishtim approach, Hashkim V'Ha'arev, early every morning and every evening, Amar Rav Yochanan K'dei Lebatla Mikrisha Shachris V'Harvis. Why? Because the Plishtim wanted to make Klal Yisrael stop saying Krishma in the morning and the evening. And what happened? And the Plishtim stood there for 40 days. Amar Rav Yochanan, so continues Rav Yochanan darshaning all about Goliath as he and the Plishtim are coming to wage war with Klal Yisrael. Vayetze ish habeinayim mimacha nois Plishtim, and the Psukim continues, the Beinayim man went out of the Plishtim camps, and the pasuk concludes, and what was this man's name? Goliath. My Beinayim, what does it mean, the Ish Beinayim? Why are we referring to Goliath, such an interesting name? Omar Rav, you know why? Shemevuna Mikol Mum. He was perfect. He had no mumim. He was physically perfect. Shmuel Amar, you know what it refers to? Beinoini Shebe'echav. That Goliath was the middle. He wasn't too big. He wasn't too small. He was the middle of his brothers, one of 4 brothers, Rashi explains, as the Gemara itself is going to tell us in a moment. Rav Shila Amar Shu Asli Kibinyan. He was as strong as a building itself. Rav Yochanan Amar says, Rav Yochanan Bar Meah Papi V'chadi Nunoi. Says Rav Yochanan, he was born of 100 stepfathers and 1 father. And all the relations that his mother had contributed, Mibain, from all the different men, contributed to this incredible strength that was to Goliath. And the pasuk continues, we're about 10 lines from the wide lines. First word on the line is Na'i, the Goliath Shemai. And the pasuk says his name was Goliath from where? Migas, from Gas. Tani Rav Yosi Shekol Dashin is Imai Kigas. Because everyone would press down on his mother like a gas, like a wine press. Again, honing in on this detail that his mother had quite a promiscuous life, that she allowed all different men to sleep with her, but that eventually contributed to having this child that was a giant, these children that were giants, one of them being Goliath. Continues the Gemara, Ksiv Ma'arois, Ukrainian Ma'arochais. It says in the pasuk the keys of the Plishtim, but you read Ma'arochais of Plishtim. Tani Rav Yosef, Sha'akol Ha'aru Bi'imai. Again, another drush about the mother of Goliath, that everyone would sleep with Goliath's mother. Continues the Gemara, Ksiv Harafa. The pasuk says Harafa Uksiv Arpa, but then it says her name was Arpa. Rav Shmuel Chanama Arpa Shmavla Nikra Shmai Arpa. One says the name was Harafa. Why was she called Arpa? Shekal Arfin Aisai Machayreha. Because everyone would sleep with her from the back. Everyone would sodomize her, having relations with her from behind. V'chadamar Arpa Shema. Because everyone would crush her beneath them like crushing wheat. Again, all different ways of showing how the mother of Goliath had incredible amounts of relationships. And again, we're darshaning these words of Harafa as Arpa. Continues the Gemara, and similarly we see Vatika Chaisha, and the woman took Vatifrais Hamesech al Panei Habe'er, and she spread over the curtain over the well. Vatishtach alav harpois, and she scattered the crushed wheat on it, harifos. We see harifos again is referring to crushed wheat. Again, honing in on this detail that this word haripais means to crush, to pound, talking about the multiple and incessant relationships that Goliath's mother had, viba yisima, and another raya, mehacha im tichachish es ha'evil b'machteish b'toich harifais ba'eli. If a fool with a mortar amid the crush of the wheats of the vestal, again we see that this word harafa is referring to being crushed, being pounded. And again, obviously, what we're referring to, everyone's thinking of Arpa from the famous Rus story. And the Pashtus is that this is the same Arpa, and that this Goliath's mother of Harafa, who we're referring to as Arpa, was indeed one and the same. The Gemara continues in the second white line, darshaning about Goliath's mother, Ves Arbaas Ila Yoldu. And she had these 4 children, Laharafa Bigas, born to her in Gas, Iflu Biad David, Ubiad Avadav. And they fell by the hands of David and the hands of his servants. Ma'ininu. Who are these 4 children? Amar Rav Chisda, Sof Umidan, Goliath v'Yeshvi. The 4 names, Yeshvi ben Noif, the 4 names of these children of Harafa, one of them being Goliath. So Yiplu b'yad David b'yad Avadav, and they fell into the hands of David and the hands of his servant Techsef, as the pasuk says. V'atisha charba l'chamaysa b'ruach davka ba. And this is, of course, the proof that we see that the person we're referring to is the same person as in the Rus story. And Arpa kissed his mother Naami, but Rus grabbed hold to her and cleaved to her. Amar Rav Yitzchak Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yevayu beni anishuka. Let them come the son of the one who was kissed, Arpa. V'yeblu biyad beni hadavuka. And let him fall by the hands of the son of the woman who was cleaved, is Ross, of course, referring to David HaMelech. And finally, we conclude with today, Darash Rava Darshins, why was Arpa, Harafa, why indeed was she have this chos, we'll call it, or whatever the reason is, that she had these 4 incredible giants of children. Pischar Arba Dimoi Sharidu Arpa al Chamasai. For the 4 tears that Arpa shed on her mother-in-law, Zos Chaviyatzvin Arba Gibayrim. That is the reason why she was Zaycha, she married these 4 warriors, Shnemar V'tisaini, as the pasuk says, V'tisena Kailan. And they raised their voices and they cried again. It says about Goliath's spear, the shaft of his spear, Karinan eitz chanisai, and elsewhere it's called the eitz, the wood of his spear. Amar Rav Elazar, Adayin lo higianu lechatzi shabachah shaloisa rasha. Says Rav Elazar, the chaytz, which means half, means we haven't reached half of the praise of that wicked one. Mikan she'atzil esaper b'shvachan shal rashayim, that even with all these descriptions, we haven't reached half of the description, as we do not want to give praise to a rasha. Ask the Gemara of Loftach Meiklau, so don't say anything. No, we give the shvach of Goliath. Why? Because that ultimately brings back the shvach to David HaMelech. But we don't want to do it too much. And we're going to stop over here. We'll pick it up in the next year from the 2 dots. B'siyata Dishmaya.